2067 is the year. Massive fires started to spread across the Earth as a result of unusual climatic warming. Cities burned to the ground, vegetation died off, and natural oxygen vanished. As a result, the final, lighted city on Earth is where people still breathe synthetic oxygen. This causes a lot of people to start vomiting blood, and eventually they pass away. The name of this syndrome is consumption. The end of humanity is inevitable. Jude Mathers and Ethan White both work in the tunnel. They both perform technical work to maintain the nuclear reactor's steady operation because a nuclear explosion could happen in the absence of adequate support. Since he was a young child, Ethan has had a bracelet on his arm that he cannot take off and that is constantly illuminated in red. Xanti, Ethan's wife, also suffers from consumption illness. If he works more, makes more money, and buys his wife a better breathing mask, Ethan thinks he can assist her. Regina Jackson, who oversees the division that does particle research, calls Ethan one day. He is followed by Jude, who saved him as a child and is always watching out for him. When Ethan mentions his father Richard White, who used to work in the laboratory, Regina tells him in her office that he can save everyone and directs him there. Ethan is shown a technology at the lab called the Chronicle that has the ability to send signals and things into the future as well as receive responses. Ethan is informed that earlier they sent a signal using radio waves to check if anything was there. Such an operation does not require much power, the opposite side. It turns out that the future, 407 years in the future from the present, is on the other side. Ethan is initially surprised by this because experts believe that humans won't exist in more than 20 years. And if the solution is found in the future, it indicates that extinction has been avoided. But he is even more shocked and the message he has received from the future is displayed to him. It reads, Present Ethan White, Ethan first resolutely rejects any travel. In addition, there is a flashback in which we learn that Ethan's father made him a box-shaped present for his 8th birthday. The same bracelet with a red light on it was locked onto when Ethan inserted his hand into the device. The father then walked away, and when he later called home to persuade Ethan's mother to accompany her son outside, they were attacked. As a result, the mother was murdered by the assailant, and Jude Mathers managed to save Ethan. Xanti convinces Ethan to leave the house and look for a means to save humanity. A metal flower bearing the words, I will find a way to return to you, is left by Ethan himself for the recipient. Before they depart, one of the scientists hands Ethan a tool called Archie that will help him with his mission and informs him that they will keep an eye on his vital indicators. When Ethan finally removes his suit after arriving in the future, it explodes after first starting to burn. Ethan finds himself in a completely livable jungle-like environment when he awakens, and he comes to the conclusion that mankind have truly discovered a cure for consumption and have been able to rebuild the Earth. However, there are no visible living people in the area. Archie is also unable to find any satellites. Ethan finds a skeleton with a hole in its forehead after venturing a little further into the jungle. Ethan recognizes that it is his skeleton after comparing the jewelry on his arm with the clothes the skeleton is wearing. The skeleton's bracelet is a green light, which is the only distinction. Ethan films a video message saying, Looks like I'm going to die here, after first losing hope. After scanning the skeleton for a moment, Ethan finds an aged but functional Archie with a broken screen and a 2% battery level. When Ethan requests that this Archie play the most recent recording, he overhears fragments of messages. Speaking as Ethan, Jude said, Looks like I'm going to die here. Maybe that's for the best. Jude yells, This is our fate, before Ethan asks, What did you have to sacrifice? And Jude replies, I became your family, all this for you. Breathe. Resist, and Ethan's crying. A gunshot is heard. Ethan makes a fire in the middle of the night after exploring the jungle in vain for anyone. And because he was unable to get sustenance, he consumes berries for which Archie's database is silent. When Ethan regains consciousness, he discovers that in 2067, while monitoring his vital signs, they saw a spike in the toxin levels in his body and dispatched Jude to give him an antidote in time to save him. Jude tries to persuade Ethan that the skeleton they discovered is not his remains after displaying it to them. Jude himself exhibits odd behavior and is anxious all the time. Archie locates a signal at the same moment and directs the companions to the bunker. A remote control is found by the team once they are inside the bunker. When Ethan hits the enter key, the bracelet briefly bleeds, the light turns on, the indication on the bracelet changes to green, and the partners notice that the Chronicle is in front of them, bringing them into 2067. They are instructed to wait 4 hours before activating when a timer starts. Jude is relieved that they may return home, but Ethan is baffled as to why the bunker is deserted. Additionally, according to Ethan, the skeleton bracelet's green glow indicates that these things have already happened and they somehow missed it. Jude tries to appear anxious but insists that the skeleton is not Ethan's remains. When Ethan launches a recording of the Chronicle's historical material, he is greeted by a hologram of his father. Richard White tells him that the Chronicle would be making an inquiry into the future in an effort to learn how they were able to save the Earth and avoid extinction. Richard is informed that the year 2474 is, on the other side, and that he should send it. And White, Regina Jackson, who shows up, starts to think that Richard introduced the message rather than that it was a communication from the future. Regina wishes to deliver material, but the lab scientist now says that the year 2474 has had a breakdown. Ethan and Jude are informed of the nuclear reactor's power breakdown at the same time the holographic transmission is cut off. Who eventually fixed the reactor? Who sent the message to deliver it, where is anyone to obtain the medicine from, and why Jude was sent instead of, say, some medic soldier are all mysteries to Ethan. Ethan agrees to assist Jude with restoring the reactor and power supply but wants Jude to have a second look around first because he is anxious. The heroes find the ruins of the city as a whole as they get closer to the border of the jungle and the oxygen plant they are familiar with. Greenery has overtaken everything. Ethan discovers there is no cure and that humanity have not developed a means of surviving after entering the city and discovering a few remains. When people could no longer tamper with its life support, the Earth just waited for humanity to extinct on its own before recovering. Ethan locates Xanti's classroom and finds her unfinished message. I wish you were back, along with some of her remains and a flower that reads, I'll find a way back to you. Jude corrects Ethan when he begins to blame himself for not returning to his wife, and Ethan then uses the exact words from Archie's recording, it might work out best. They are all no longer in pain. Ethan is astonished and requests the archive tapes be played from Archie from the past. A disoriented Jude draws a gun and points it at Ethan after hearing this. Then, as he nervously paces about, he keeps saying, I'm in control. Jude doesn't shoot Ethan as he had assumed, instead, he only prods him to go back and fix the reactor. Ethan knows he needs to redirect the power once he is down in the reactor room. The door starts to close after the first effort is unsuccessful. Ethan advises Jude to move the backup lever while the pressure is being released as Jude begins to support the door. Ethan then decides to offer himself as a sacrifice by shoving Jude out of the room and moving the right lever. Everything has returned to normal when the reactor was repaired. Jude finds a way into the room to save Ethan since she is unable to let him perish. The heroes discover that there are no significant system problems and that the system will activate in 37 minutes when they go back to the control panel. Jude sighs with relief and just wants to relax, but Ethan goes to investigate one of the doors and finds that his own remains are concealed behind it. In front of Jude, Ethan asks to play the final video clip while rearranging the insides of the old and new Archie. It depicts the characters bickering while Jude grips Ethan's forehead with a rifle. A shot is heard after Jude covers Archie's screen with his hand. In an effort to locate the remedy, Ethan searches the bunker. Ethan decides to finish listening to the old Chronicle tapes after failing in his attempt. Jude tries to stop him from doing that by attempting to destroy the memory module in a different room. Jude is successfully locked inside, and Ethan then settles up to watch the tape. In it, Richard White says that all of his efforts were made entirely for the benefit of Ethan. He intended for Ethan to travel to the future and remain there, where he would be able to live longer than he could back home. The video then shows Regina and toddler Jude walking inside the room. Richard tells Regina that he has designed the system such that it can only be activated at the other end with Ethan's DNA after realizing that Regina's purpose is not to find the cure but to flee with a few dozen selected ones. Regina kills Richard to stop him from interfering with her plan, and then she instructs Jude to take on the role of Ethan's guardian angel so that he can eventually be sent to the future and open the portal. Jude exits the closed room and makes an effort to persuade Ethan that the past cannot be changed. Jude and Ethan engage in conversation as a result of the developing confrontation, which Ethan overheard while it was being recorded. Jude attacks Ethan and places a gun to his head as he attempts to open the gateway. Jude, however, decides to end her life rather than shooting Ethan. In parallel, a group of selected ones are getting ready to depart into the future in the year 2067. Regina instructs one of the lab guards to kill Ethan when he shows up and leave him here as she waits for Ethan to return. This explains why Ethan found the corpses, Archie and plants from the future instead of Ethan show up at the lab, where a film of Regina murdering Richard White is being screened. Then, after breaking the message and destroying the chronicle, Ethan sends a message to the earlier past with the words, "Present it in white." In 2067, while watching television, Xanthi discovers that following the receipt of the video, Regina was detained, the business was examined, numerous plant species were discovered. And humanity might have a chance for an ecological revival. A living flower is given to Xanthi. After Jude is laid to rest in 2474, Ethan plants a metal flower by his grave and notices that it is empty of any writing from Xanthi. Then, as he turns his head, he discovers a living butterfly. He notices that his skeleton is no longer there as he runs to the underground escape. Ethan sees the metropolis of the future below him as he sprints to the edge of the jungle.